Hello everyone, greetings for the day and welcome back to Train Brain channel. This is Divya. Today we're going to talk about something that affects many kids but isn't always easy to understand. ADD, attention deficit disorder. Whether you're a parent, teacher, or just curious about what ADD is and how it affects children, then this video is for you. Here, I'm going to break it down into simple terms. We're going to talk about what ADD looks like in everyday's life and give some real tips on how to support kids who have it with my preschool experience. ADD doesn't define a child, but understanding it can make a huge difference in helping them thrive. So stick around and let's dive into the world of ADD together. So, what is ADD? ADD, as I mentioned, it stands for Attention Deficit Disorder. It's a condition that affects how someone's brain works. Could be like making it hard to focus. They might have difficulty to pay attention or stay still for even a longer period of time. Some kids with ADD may feel like their mind is always jumping from one thing to another, from one task to another. Even the most simplest task, these children find it more challenging. For example, listening to the teacher, they find it very difficult to listen to the teacher. Finishing homework on their own. Even playing a quiet game or solving a puzzle becomes very challenging for such children. So let's understand, what does ADD look like? I'm going to give you simple examples to understand ADD much better. The first thing that I wanted to share with all of you is like children who have ADD, they might have trouble focusing on one thing. Now imagine they are in the class and their teacher is telling them a story. What we generally do when the teacher tells a story, we try to listen, correct? So when a child is having difficulty or having trouble to focus, what happens? They might notice the birds outside the window. They might start thinking about the game that they want to play later once they're back home. Or they might be thinking about the vacation that they had recently visited or recently that they had on. So before we could get it, the children have missed half of what the teacher was saying. And this is quite common with children with ADD. My dear parents and teachers, this is the first thing that we got to understand. Does my child have problem or does my child have trouble focusing on one thing at a time? One thing at a time. When I'm saying focus, it doesn't mean that they have to sit for hours together, at least for 5 minutes. Can they focus? So their minds often wander. This is the first thing. The second one is like they get easily distracted. Now, suppose you make them sit down to do their homework. But when they hear the sibling playing in the next room, or when they see a toy which is rightly placed near their desk, instead of finishing their homework, they feel like going back to check what's happening outside. So, this is distraction. And distractions make it really hard to complete a child's task. And children who have ADD get easily distracted. They get easily distracted. So, this is the second one. And the third thing we talk about is forgetfulness. So, kids with ADD might forget things easily. For example, like you might be on your way to school or you're asking them to bring something, to have complete their lunch. Or even though you have reminded them to bring lunch, say, suppose, like if you're a teacher, I'll put it in a nice way. Say, suppose if you're a teacher and if you ask the child, okay, so tomorrow we have a healthy snack day and you got to bring such a lunch to the class. So children might be forgetful, correct? They might leave it behind because they were thinking about something else. So forgetting even the smallest things can happen often with ADD. So just check. Is my child forgetful? Is my child getting easily distracted? Does my child have trouble focusing on one thing? Check. They could be having attention issues, right? Even the fourth one, the restlessness. Restlessness could also be a sign. Like imagine, like if you're doing a story time or you're like, sitting for your dinner. So children can't sit still for even for a very less number of minutes, even for 2 minutes, even for 1 minute. They can't sit still, right? So this is something which I can say it is no problem. But what happens here is like, it's very impossible for children with ADD to sit still. It's very impossible for them. So what do they do? If you're putting them into certain situations like that or circumstances, they might start to fidget. When I say fidgeting, like, they can tap their feet, or they feel like needing to get up. They get up and they move around because their body feels restless, right? So restlessness is also one sign of attention deficit disorder, ADD. The last one, my dear friends, they interrupt others, always interrupting others. So it's very hard time for them to wait patiently for their turn. They might burst out, right? Or they interrupt others. They're not being or meaning to be rude, but that's their nature. They might hurt others by mistake. It is just that their brain wants to share thoughts as soon as they pop up. They don't even think whether it is good, bad, is it fine or not. No, it happens just like that. So these are some of the signs. To summarize, so I get back on this. So please note, if the child has trouble focusing on one thing, is your child getting easily distracted? Is your child forgetful? Is your child always being restless? They can't sit still even for a minute. Is my child always interrupting others, even though they don't mean to be rude to others? Are they doing it? So this is a sign, right? So they could have ADD. I'm not saying they will have. They could be a possibility. And as parents and as caretakers and teachers, we cannot avoid that. That puts me to a question. Divya, is having ADD bad? No, ADD is not bad. It just means that your brain works a little differently. We know that everybody is unique, so everyone's brain is unique. And some people's brains make them great at paying attention. So they can sit still, they can focus, they can concentrate, they can finish their task, listen to their teacher, follow commands. Correct? Why? Because their brain is able to pay attention. But why the other children are not able to do? Because their brain is not able to pay attention to, or their brain is not making them to pay attention. They can't sit still. So what they have to do, they might need a little extra help from those things. Okay. And the good news is also like, the kids who have ADD are often super creative. They're full of energy, full of enthusiasm, and they're great at thinking a lot of things at once. Now, they might be thinking, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that. I want to go back home and do this. I went for this vacation. There's so many things which is going around in their mind, which children who do not have ADD might find it very difficult. So look at this. They have this. This is also a good sign. But what happens when you have so many thoughts in your mind at once, it becomes very difficult for you to focus. So we have to make sure that the children take a lot of effort, extra effort to focus. So there are a lot of ways to manage ADD. And yes, definitely schools can do well with children with ADD, but definitely they need a lot of support from home and the activities that they do it in their day-to-day life. That helps us to understand, why does ADD happen? Why should it happen? Why does it happen? See, ADD isn't something that I or you choose to have it, right? It's just how our brain is wired. It's not your fault. And it doesn't mean that you're not smart. So please understand that. If your child has ADD, that doesn't mean that your child has got it or your child is not smart. ADD often runs in families. So if you have ADD, there could be a possibility your parent could also have. If your child has ADD, probably even you would have had it, or your relative could have had it, right? And it is something that you're born with. And while it can sometimes make certain tasks harder, but it also means that is how your brain is always buzzing with new ideas or creations and other things. So there's so many things which is actually happening in your mind. So it keeps your brain super busy. Children or adults who have ADD, their brain is always super busy. They cannot concentrate on one thing. They always are restless. That brings us to another question. Many parents do ask me, okay, my child has ADD. Does it affect my child's day-to-day life skills? So let's start, because we work with preschoolers and we have seen a lot of children these days come with these symptomatic qualities. Okay, they come not with the symptoms, they come with this, and we see. And it is quite challenging for parents as well as teachers how we work with them. But when it comes down to children having ADD and when they are into schools, it's quite challenging for the teachers also. But how can we handle them? But how can we work with such children? So at schools, we might try to listen, correct? So to the needs and the necessities of the child from the parent. But sometimes in case of the parent has not known about this, that their child has ADD, that's when we start working on the observation, right? So yes, you always begin with by giving instruction that to the child that you got to listen to your teacher, but the child's mind is still thinking about the game or the play area or the recess time, or they're thinking about the colorful posters that is put on the notice board, right? So the child always, or they already missed the lesson. So this we know, this we understood, this happens with this child who's got ADD. But how do we make sure that they are staying focused? So what you can do is, like, in case if a teacher identifies this is what is happening with this child, you can always make them to sit in front of the class. So a lot of other distractions can be avoided. So, or if there is a window close by, you can make sure that the child is not being seated very close to the window, so that the outside distractions are never being alarming to the child. This is one of the things. So these are the tasks that you can actually do. Now, coming down to the homeworks, like sitting down and making a homework, it's like, keeping the child's brain occupied. But a child who has ADD, the brain is always jumping. Okay, what's on the TV? What is the snack that I want to eat? What is my mom doing? When is my dad coming? What is my brother doing? Right? So they are already struggling to stay focused on one task for a longer period. But what about the homework? Right? So what do we do at that time is, like, we break the homework into smaller parts. Like, do the first problems, take a break, come back, do 5 problems, take a break, come back and do the summary of all of it. Correct? So when you're trying to break the homework into smaller tasks, it makes it easier for a child. And it also helps them to rest in between. So this is how you can work with the homework. Now, coming with playing with friends, when they are playing with their friends a game, or they find it very difficult, right, to wait, to take turn, to have that patience. It's finding very difficult for them. So in the good way that you can do is, like, when they're waiting to take their turn, you can always ask the child to remind themselves about taking deeper breaths. So that is helping them to focus on what their child friend is doing, so they are ready of what to be done when their turn comes. This you can practice. And when children are at home, say suppose if the parent has asked them to clean their room, but halfway through picking up their toys, they start to look around and they start reading it. So what happened was, like, they forgot about that they have to clean, and they started reading a book. So again, there's a distraction. So how do we help in that? So we give them a checklist. When a visual checklist is given to the child, and you write instructions like, pick your toys, put them in the toy shelf, put away your clothes, make your bed, pack your bag. When you put them on these tasks onto the checklist, the child finishes one task and checks it. So this can help them to stay on track. This is one of the suggestions that we can actually work with. And how can we help them? So we always receive a lot of questions like, we gave you these instructions, but at home, what do I do? Or how do I help my child to make them focus better, to finish their task better? See, it is not very easy for all of us to actually work. And miracles doesn't happen in a day. You need to be consistent. You need to be patient enough to make sure that the child is doing these. So that means you need to have a routine also. Every day, let them do the same thing, or let them do the same thing in the same order. For example, like, after the dinner, you ask the child to brush their teeth and to read a book and go to sleep. Or when they're beginning to have their breakfast, it's like, much before eating the breakfast, brush their teeth, pack the school bag, and then they have to have their breakfast and then again go back to school. So this routine will help their brain to know what to expect next. This is one thing. So following routine would help. And taking timers and breaks. Like if you know it is too hard for your child to focus for a long time, use a timer. Set it for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, focus on one particular task. Then give them a short break. Ask them to stretch a bit. Ask them to move around in a small place. Okay? Or you can give them a snack even before they're beginning to go back to the next activity. So if the child is still not understanding, always work on visual reminders. See, we can always put visual reminders. We usually do it in the schools, right? So we put the sticky notes. It could be on the teacher's desk. It could be on the bulletin board. It could be on the backside of the door or wherever the child is able to see. We put a lot of sticky notes. So that becomes like a visual reminder also to the child. If your child is not able to follow verbal instructions, put visual reminders. Okay, put sticky notes. Finish math problems. Pack your bag. Go to bed. So you can put something like that. And movement is very difficult for them to put them still. They'll still be jumping around. They will still be running around your yard. They will still be doing a quick dance because they're releasing a lot of extra energy, right? So that is there, but we got to be working a little bit more on putting them onto sitting tolerance. Special support, if you need, please take it from a special educator or a teacher because they would be able to give you extra support. It could be like they can give you instructions of how exactly you need to work with children at home, or they might give you a follow-up plan, what you need to be working. So it's always good that if you need, please take a professional help on that. So whatever I'm sharing, it is based upon the experiences that I have it from my school. So based on that is what I'm giving, but I would always advise each of you in case if you are struggling with your children who has ADD, always seek professional help. Okay. But yes, what you can do if you think that your child has ADD, the first thing is like, your parents, right? So you are a grown up adult. So first, trust yourself. Trust yourself. Trust your child. Then figure out what is going on with your child and find out the ways to make it easier life for your child. So when I say a easier life, the ways to make his school life easier, the ways to make his home life easier, right? So what we need to do, we need to meet the special doctor or we need to meet the child pediatrician. They might route you to a special person who can actually help you with ADD, and they might give you some tips and tricks so that your child is able to focus better. Correct? So that is one thing. As the kids grow older, they often find it easier to manage their ADD, right? So sometimes they need help for a longer time, but since they're growing older and you're also focusing a little every day, and since every day is like a better day for them, the child might also work better. So that means you're succeeding, and the children can also grow and they can succeed really well with this ADD. So to summarize, it is okay to have ADD, but we got to help and support children who have this, right? So having ADD just means that our brain is a little different, and that doesn't mean it's bad. With the right help and the right tools, children can focus, children can finish tasks, and they can do well in their school academics and in their life. Everyone has things they're good at. Let's identify that. And they need help for little things that they need to perfectly do. Correct? So if you have or if your child has ADD, you're unique, creative, and capable, and there are lots of ways to make life fun and successful. So this was all about for today's topic of discussion. I hope I gave you some kind of a learning. And if you have more learnings on ADD, or if you have any references like where parents and children can actually get help, so leave it in the comment section. It will always be helpful for many of them for looking for the source of information. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great lunch.